am skipping along narrow Crown Street in Ryde, between the Crown Hotel and the newly constructed National Provincial Bank. I have just finished school and I'm on my way home. It is snowing, not hard or cold enough to settle, and it fascinates me. It is also April Fool's Day and a Monday. The year is 1968 and I am 10 years old. I cross busy Lynn Street and then run down St James's Street to the family house in Spencer Road. I patter down the stone steps. The ground floor is slightly below the level of the street, as it is constructed on an incline, and let myself into the hallway. I open the door to the kitchen, where I see my mother looking serious and my grandmother sniffling. "Grampy died today, Jules. This afternoon," Mum informs me. I must look blank because she adds, "You will never see him again. Never. Do you understand that?" I don't know whether I do. Just over 3 months previously, I had experienced the happiest Christmas ever. I remember him warming himself up in front of the log fire in the lounge with a cigar in one hand. He had given up smoking many years before, but would occasionally indulge in a cigar for special events. That Christmas, he had bought me a Tryon Hornby electric train set. I had loved it. He had also let me have a tumbler of woodpecker cider too. He wasn't a tall man, but he had a presence about him. I respected him. Mum thought he looked a bit like Ernest Borgnine, the actor, and perhaps he did. He had been born in 1893 in Forfar, close to Dundee, on the eastern coast of Scotland. Throughout most of his life, he was employed either as a bookkeeper or stockkeeper. He was meticulous and good with numbers. He was also fluent in French, Swahili, and Persian. He worked abroad often, including upon the heightening of the Aswan Dam. He was also a Freemason. I still have his tin with his regalia in, and I have photos of him with fellow members of his lodge abroad. During the Great War, he served as an aerial observer and was shot down over German lines, where he was treated in hospital before spending the rest of the war in a POW camp. Before that, he was in the trenches. He was wounded twice. Shot in the arm, he described the pain as similar to having a red-hot poker thrust into his skin, and once having a bullet graze his nose. He also recounted the tale of how one of his comrades had been wounded and stranded in no man's land. The enemy fire was too intense for anybody to attempt to rescue him. They heard him moaning all day, and it wasn't till nightfall that he was picked up. He should have bled to death, but he staunched his wound with mud, and that saved him. On another occasion, a German soldier who had surrendered was told to go back to his lines, but unbeknown to him, a long delay hand grenade had been slipped into the pocket of his great coat. He got about 50 yards before being blown apart. My grandfather had been quite horrified by that. After the war, he married, but lost his wife during labour along with the twins she was carrying. Tragic. He then met and married my grandmother in 1926, with whom he had my mother in 1927. But my mother had become ill as soon as she was born. It looked as though she was going to die, having never left the hospital. My grandfather's response was to remove her, despite the protests of the staff, from the hospital. Underneath, these people don't really care. A baby needs to be with its mother, he had told everybody. He was right. My mother survived. He spent the next 3 decades working for oil and construction companies across the world, Nigeria, Egypt, and Persia amongst others. He made certain he was out of the country for the Second World War. One war is enough for any man, and planned by those who don't have to do the dirty work, he had muttered tersely when I had spoken of it. In the late 50s, he had settled down to retirement on the island. That's where I come in. I recollect him working part-time preparing accounts for a local garage owner, who was mentioned in the book Babysham Nights, and also running a beach kiosk on Ventnor seafront. He was a terrible driver too, having been given his licence before compulsory tests. On one occasion he left the handbrake off on his Ford Popular and had to chase it down a hill, jump on the running board, stretch in through the window and pull the handbrake on before it crashed into a wall. I think he was in his early 70s then. As I was a child, I never spoke deeply with him, but he had a couple of outlandish views. I believe he read Omar Khayyam and other mystical poets in Persia, which may be where he once derived some of his philosophy from. My mother was once bemoaning the fact that she was unsuccessful in life. She was deeply ambitious underneath, and my grandfather merely replied, "Tens of thousands of swimmers swam for the solitary place in the lifeboat. You made it, and they all perished. Is that failure?" I also recollect him saying on New Year's Day, 1968, in front of Nana and I, "We are closer to the end of the time than we are to last year." I knew what he meant, but Nana didn't. The last time I saw him alive was in St Mary's Hospital. He had suffered a heart attack a few days previously. Mum had driven Nana and I up to see him. He was in good spirits and looked to be recovering. He told us how he had had a very vivid dream of driving round a lake in Africa and how wonderful and tranquil it was. We know now that the lake had represented the great unknown. We had all gone home expecting him back. It never happened, as he suffered a massive fatal coronary at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 1st of April, 1968. I am in the lounge at home. I am throwing catkins into the log fire and watching each one burn brightly before merging into the flames. I am repeating this time after time. My grandfather's funeral took place this morning. He was cremated, and for some strange reason I need to recreate it repeatedly. I am 13 years old and in bed. I'm thinking about Grampy. I'm thinking about what it must be to be oblivious for all eternity. For a split second I comprehend it, and then it is gone. I will never grasp it again. Well, he certainly fooled us all, dying when we thought he was on the mend, my mother states, as though he did it on purpose. I just nod. I don't really understand.